Hollie Hughes is a Liberal Senator from New South Wales. Jenna Clarke is the freshly minted host of The Front Page, which comes up about an hour from now, normally Young Guns time. So thank you very much for tonight, and thank you for hopping on just before you're back on the telly as well, Jenna. Congrats on the show, mate. You're a rock star with massive things to come.
Couldn't have done it without you, Paulie. Thank you so much for having me.
Always here to help. Yeah, and of course, don't forget, you can hear her on the radio, read it on the paper. She's the it girl, baby. And she joins us now to talk about a whole bunch of stuff. So, Senator, what about China turning around and saying that we are the bullies when it comes to the relationship, that it's Australia that is the problem, not China itself? Last night we had a chat to the Treasurer who talked about business going for China Plus. Here's what he said.
When we have been subject to this economic coercion, when China has released their 14 grievances with Australia, we've pushed back. We will be clear and consistent under Prime Minister Scott Morrison about what our national interests are and how we serve to protect and promote them.
But how is it that Australia is the apparent aggressor here, Hollie?
Well, you'd certainly say we're the little brother, or perhaps we're the David in this relationship. But when you look at what China's done to so many of our industries, whether it's been the lobster industry, barley, even the coal ships that they've kept off the coast, they've certainly punished Australia more significantly than I think we've seen anywhere else in the world. But we do need to defend our national interest at all times. And what our government's been focused on is finding alternate markets for our producers. And we've had incredible success with that. When you look at the wine industry, the way the UK is opening up to that, there are so many other markets open and available to us. But we do always need to put our own sovereign interest first. This is not about bowing down to anybody else. It's about putting our sovereign interest first. There'll be plenty of people saying the world's in a state it's in thanks to China. So I think it's always important we put ourselves first, our producers first, our interests first, and there's plenty of other markets. We are clean, we are green, we have some of the best produce in the world, and that's what people want.
Yeah, Jenna, it's red hot, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like the Senator says, it's so important to put our own sovereignty first, but I think there's such a disparate sort of conversation happening around the country, as we've seen with lockdowns. We've got Premier Mark McGowan here in Perth, who obviously, knowing that the biggest consumer of iron ore is obviously our friends up in China, so is very tempered in his language when it comes to talking about the trading partner and things like that. But I think if we get on the same page and have a national conversation around making sure that our sovereignty is put first, and then and like the Senator says, that we need to find those other markets for expansion for our great produce and our finite resources now and into the future. Because again, iron ore is probably going to, it'll dry up at some stage, and we need to continue to find good places for all of our other great things that we can export to the world.
Yeah. Now, by the way, obviously in your new gig, your freshly new gig, I'll tell you what, when you sleep, I don't know, but you're young enough, so just punish that body. Punish that body. You'll need those Pilates later in life, love. Till then, rack up the cash, all right? Well done. Now...
I don't know how many kids Jenna's got, but, that's when you lose sleep.
Yeah. Now's when she's going to go hard, and then all of that's a little bit later. Yeah, exactly. No,
Trust me, you know.
All right. Now, front page of your paper, The West Australian today, tell you what, an opinion poll says Western Australians view themselves as Westralians first, Australians second. They loved that on the front page today, didn't they?
Oh, look, absolutely, Paul. And look, maybe 3 years ago, this would have been hilarious, and we probably would have been making sure that this was the only story that people were talking about today. But I think we are now 2 years into a pandemic where we have heard nothing but that, we put West Australians first. We're going to crush and kill this virus that isn't even in this state at this point in time. So the parochialism is getting a little exhausting to those of us that probably have loved ones outside of the great state of West Australia. But what interests me, Paul, is the fact that I think that this research came from an independent think tank, and none of us have been thinking independently for 2 years because we're all now having to bow down to Emperor McGowan.
A very good point. Well, Senator from New South Wales, you will have no opinion on this whatsoever because we do not wish to offend.
Look, darling, not true. I went to school in WA. I lived in Perth from when I was 10 to almost 17. I love WA. I have some of my best friends in the world over there. Would love to go and see them. But my parents were originally from Sydney, and they used to always say, the wise men from the East that they do not like. And it was absolutely true when we lived over there. And Jenna, I don't know if you're born and bred Perth, but certainly if you come from the East, I reckon the most successful person that's come from the East is Mark McGowan, because they normally don't.
100%.
They really, you are not accepted ever. I mean, I lived in Moree for 10 years and I wasn't even getting close to being slightly local. So...
Well, Jenna's a country girl from country WA, so she's all in there. That orange dirt,
she's safe.
It's right in there. You know, it's why and she still owes me a lunch and owes me a dinner, and then I'm going to take her for a smoke at Devlin. So I'd like to get to Perth at some time. All right, for Jenna's health.
Well, we've just had breaking news, guys, that apparently now, because obviously McGowan will be handing down his first budget as Treasurer tomorrow. We're going to touch on this in the front page tonight, but his plans to potentially keep the borders closed until April 2022. So see you in June next year.
Yeah, all right.
Oh my God. So I do another Sky show, and we've been laughing, but the four of us on that panel, we're going to be going to London from Sydney before we're going to be going to Perth.
Yeah, can go to Disneyland but can't go to Perth. Makes perfect sense. All right, now, equally substantive, well, actually far more substantive issue that I know both of you care about deeply is the Women's Safety Summit that has been happening for the past few days. Maurice Payne had this to say about the summit this week.
If anyone walked away from this summit and thought that the only answer was funding or money, then they would have taken the wrong outcome from this summit. I think that it has been very collaborative, very constructive. I think that the words that Patty and Danella and Sandra read to us all of the statement from this summit are a very powerful note to the future about what we can all do.
Now, Senator, I say this because we've talked about it before, right? That obviously this sort of policy area can be as fraught, emotional and complicated as disability issues, and obviously you're across all of those as well, right? What did you take out of what happened this week?
Look, I think the summit itself was quite fantastic, but I was disappointed that yet again we saw cheap political point scoring occurring. And I have to say, as someone who comes from the conservative side of politics, it really doesn't matter what we say on this issue. We're going to be attacked, we're going to be denigrated, and we're going to be pulled down, because a lot of this is still caught up in this very hardcore left feminist agenda. And it wouldn't matter what we did. I mean, we're spending over $1 billion around this sort of domestic violence, respect at work issue. We passed respect at work legislation last week. There are other things that we are still looking at. There is not one recommendation we've rejected. It is just looking at them because, you know, surprisingly, for those with some sort of intellect, they might understand, legislative change requires quite a bit of work behind it. It's not something that can just happen in many cases overnight. There's complexities to it. We enacted what we could as quickly as possible. And one of the things that we did that I don't think has got any attention or anywhere near enough attention was we identified in the legislation last week that we have now given paid compassionate leave to people who experience a miscarriage as well as to their partner. This was all part of the Respect at Work recommendations. But all anyone can do from the left side of politics is tear it down, pull it down and talk negatively about it. Until these people can put aside their hatred for the conservative side of politics and say, you know what, there actually are women who think conservatively. There are women who sit on the centre-right politics, and we need to bring them into the conversation, include them as well, rather than have this totally exclusive left-wing talk fest. We're never going to get anywhere. And this is when we talk about respect. It's not just respect for women who have left-wing views. It's respect for all women. And until we can pull that together, we are not going to see the change that we want.
Yeah, I mean, Jenna, the truth is there's a difference between Twitter and policy, right? And policy sometimes can be complicated, disappointing, boring. It's not as sweeping as some people may like. And as I talked about with Amanda Stoker the other night, you know, just because it's my experience and it's my mate's experience doesn't mean, of course, it's all blokes. But my sense is that all blokes would die for the women in their lives, right? Would do so for their friends. But there are people who make a conscious decision to break the law it's already illegal to do many of the things that happen in homes way too frequently. So I don't know what can ever ultimately be done to prevent somebody who is intent on already breaking a law. But what was your sense out of the week?
Look, I kind of agree with the senator there. I think the political point scoring was just getting exhausting. It was COVID premiers raging down the Prime Minister 2.0, and it was just getting quite distracting. And again, like there was the great legislation put forward about the miscarriage payment, but also the feds want to define coercive control. No other jurisdiction in the country has done that yet. So that is fantastic as a great step forward. But like you say, I think you can throw as much money at something, you can legislate until you're blue in the face, but until we see actual changes within our own homes, in our own backyards, in how we treat everyone in our life, not just women, men, women, children, everyone in our life with respect and equality, we're never going to see that change. So the Prime Minister can be the keynote speaker at as many summits as he likes. Unless we start taking some personal responsibility to invoke that change in our own personal lives, we're not going to see a cultural shift.
Well, and an understanding about how that cultural change needs to be explained and understood by different people, including the people who you vehemently disagree with, is that you can disagree on everything from, dare I say, Trump to nuclear energy and all in between, but you can be united on these sorts of fundamental things. And that's what I think is frustrating. But I don't get it. I'm a bloke. I'm not allowed to, all the rest of it.
No, that's not true, Paul. And that's actually the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
People talk about this as it's a women's issue, and it's not.
Oh, I agree.
It is actually just as important for you and the other incredible men in our lives that call out the behaviour that is sexist, that is misogynistic, that is negative, that many men have seen in their mates, in their families, but kind of let slide, don't want to cause a problem, don't want to pull it out. That's where we're going to see the cultural change. It's not about pitting left against right women, which is where I think too many of these summits land.
Yeah, I'm with you completely. I mean, look, I will translate it into full bogan, right? As a full bogan. If you're somebody who disrespects your partner, would physically go after them, you're a dog, all right? There's no question about it.
I made sure I wore really big pearls tonight because the Sydney Morning Herald wrote a story. The bigger pearls, the more power you had.
Yeah, excellent. All right. Well, the Pearls of Wisdom will continue all night long on the front page 45 minutes from now. See, Jenna? That's called a transition. Thank you very much, Jenna. We'll see you on the telly. Hollie, we'll see you again very soon.